my friends, instead, my friends, we all know it, and my friend, I love you. Charlie helped me, not because I was a friend, but because I was gay. I'm certain of it. I found myself wishing that I could pick up the phone and talk to God and ask him for his advice and his counsel. But I can't call Jesus Christ because he was murdered 2,500 years ago. Our Heavenly Father is fake. Get back to work.
Hey everybody, my name is Jake, and hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully you can hear what I'm saying. And welcome to the show. I'm going to check in with my own live stream. We were having some technical difficulties beforehand, and I want to make sure I sound great. Many people are saying in chat. Welcome to Sunday service. My name is Jake. I used to be in a doomsday cult myself, Jehovah's Witnesses, and now I check in with not only my old high control, high demand religion, but the cults and conspiracy theories that currently dominate American life. That's what's going on. And sometimes, it's a live show. Exciting things happen. The lighting we have to figure out live sometimes. And we're figuring out what the show is, kind of. The Jehovah's Witness stuff, I like to cover them at least once a month. But for my own mental health, I am trying to branch out and cover the things that really give me existential dread. On Sunday service, that is the name of the show. And what a show we have for you today. That intro, that was just one thing I threw together a few minutes before we started recording, just for the hell of it. And what a show we have for you today. This is going to be a deep dive. There's no other way to say it. We're not going into the shallow end of the pool. We're going into, the deep end, and we are going to dive in to the deep part of it and dive deep and research a gentleman named Thiel, who is an interesting fellow. And then later, after we read boring articles for adults, I have some exciting news, which is that I think I've got my Twitch channel set up. I think I know how to stream games, and so I've got my Nintendo Switch 2. I've got some games. I figured, let's fuck around with some Twitch and see if we can do some gaming. I don't have a dual monitor thing set up. And so maybe we'll do that. I guess I should probably drop a link to my Twitch channel. That's probably going to be really critical. I'm pretty sure it's just twitch.tv/altworldly. But who's to say? Who's to say in this economy what kind of name my channel on Twitch has? Let's see. Yeah, it is. It's twitch.tv/altworldly. And you can watch the stream there, now even, if you're that kind of person. But I'm going to add it to the YouTube description, I think. You can scroll under all the sources. Yeah. And I'll have you guys vote. And we'll vote on what game I'm going to play. I've got a fancy intro I'm going to read. It is pretty fancy. It's got research. It's got quotes. Did I maybe just pull it from a video essay that I'm rethinking and more or less scrapped, but I'd already done all the research? Yeah, maybe. That's entirely possible, but we'll get to that. How's everybody doing? I wanted to give people a chance to filter in. Me and Christina have been trying to touch grass more, have been trying to do a better job of hanging out with people and not being quite so online. So we had some friends over last night. It was super fun. We played some Mario Kart World, watched some Tenet while stoned, which was great. We had a blast. I recommend doing that. It's cold where Helena Blavatsky is. How wonderful. Can Dr. Shemp do polls on YouTube? I think we might have discussed that. I think the answer might be no. Unlike the prophet of Trump, Peter Thiel I think Marjorie must have been redeemed by Jesus and born again the last couple months instead of blindly following Trump. She is seeing the light. I think she is not so much seeing the light as she is seeing that Trump is visibly not going to make it 4 years. And so she is jockeying in a position for the inevitable worlds where Donald Trump no longer exists. I mean, nobody lives forever, and Donald Trump does not seem to be at his healthiest. So, yeah, she's trying to get reelected. Midterms are coming up. Also, I'm realizing that many paintings are askew in the background. Many of the hanging art is askew. But we'll figure that out. I'm drinking a twisted tea also because we had some left over from yesterday. But I'm now realizing I need to actually pull up that Wired article on Peter Thiel. I'm humming this song, that monkey ball song from the intro clip. All right. And I don't know. We'll see how this goes. I'm sorry that my lighting is weird. I think I need we need just a new lighting situation generally. But, you don't tune into me for good lighting and good audio and consistency and quality, and definitely not quantity. But for some reason, some people do tune in to the show, and I appreciate it. But I wanted to do some research on Peter Thiel today, or maybe share some research that I have done, and then some reporting I just read in Wired. This report, which I've linked in the description, and actually, I think I accidentally gave a weird Apple News link in the description, so I'm going to update this with the real. Oh, Christina's trying to take the hit on this because she sent it to me from Apple News, but no, I'm going to take full responsibility for this because I'm a man. And this is a man's house. I take responsibility. England is cooked. We're still poached. I reject cooked and poached language. I think we have to have radical optimism because I believe it is the only practical way to ensure a better future. And sometimes also we do voices on the show, especially now that we've really whittled it down to the last 20 or so people who are willing to watch this live stream. We're trying to figure out what the hell it is we're doing. In fact, maybe, and I will get out of this accent I started doing for some reason soon, but maybe I can pitch you something and you can all, in fact, I should probably say y'all can speculate and chat as to what it is I should do. I have an idea, like a name for an idea for a game that I think has the potential to be a fun recurring segment, but I don't know how to do it ethically. So let me pitch this to you, and then you can tell me some ideas for how we can do this. This make more sense when I say it. Okay. The game would be called Bot or Not, in which somebody sends me, or I, throughout my week, have encountered somebody on social media, and I'm like, is this person a bot or not? Now, I think that sounds like a fun idea, especially because it's got a name that rhymes, but how do you do that without just ending up doxing someone? I mostly thought it would be a fun idea to, kind of dunk on normie people who are so indistinguishable from robots that they might as well be one based on their posting habits, but then I'm like, I don't... Maybe it is just better as a name, but we need segments. We have we need things that we can clip and post on YouTube Shorts and TikTok. That's the way the game is played. And in the same way, the word jockeying is stuck in my head in the same way that Marjorie Taylor Greene is jockeying for a position. I'm trying to jockey into a place where I can do creative bullshit full time. And so, like and subscribe and so forth. Although if you're here, you already did that. Now, tell your friends that there's this really good stream on Peter Thiel, but it starts, about 10 minutes in. So you can just skip that first part. Redact the name. Yeah, redact. That's the thing. Okay, so the profile picture thing, I'm like, I think maybe part of it would be that it would be a profile that does not have a profile picture, because that's kind of the first suspicious thing. before we get into the problematic area of trying to figure out, like, hey, is this person just kind of weird looking, or are they generated by Sora 2 or whatever the fuck? Who are, like, famous? Yeah, that's a good point. Or DMs. Or, like, send me a weird DM that seems like a scam. That might be more ethical if it seems like a scam. And then we can try and investigate and be like, hey, are you even a real person scammer, or are you a program run by a bot? The kind of live thinking we do on whatever the fuck this show is. No, this show has a clear theme. The theme, I'm going to be real with you, as it sometimes is going to be reading an article. That is ultimately what's going to happen. But first, let's talk about why I want to talk about Peter Thiel. I'm interested in the oligarchs, obviously, because they have an outsized role in our lives. They have control over basically all of the systems and enterprises that we need to exist, right? Like, when it comes to our healthcare and our water, the environment, the air we breathe, all of these things depend heavily on these really rich, wealthy people. And although the people themselves are not so much a problem as the systems that allowed people like them to be able to exist, I still think that usually the oligarchs end up being kind of a useful case study in ideology, in the same way that governing body members of Jehovah's Witnesses are kind of useful archetypes for cult leaders generally. Peter Thiel just keeps on being more interesting than I think he would be. And in some recent videos, I've kind of made fun of him for being stupid. Like, I've said that he doesn't really believe in anything. And I should clarify my language on that, because I am aware that Peter Thiel is Christian, which we've talked about in the couple videos we've done. I know that he has certain apocalyptic beliefs. So I do know that he believes in things. I guess, like, when I say that, what I mean is, this guy may claim to have some complicated philosophical Christian ideology, but he has suspiciously landed in the same exact position as somebody who has no beliefs or ideology at all, and who is just a narcissistic, money-grubbing piece of shit who wants to take over the world. Like, when your beliefs and your actions are, like, so asynchronous that it doesn't really matter, then I kind of just tend to think you're full of shit. But I don't know. Maybe that's not a fair way to look at humans. And the things that Peter Thiel believes genuinely are pretty intriguing. If you've watched the last couple main videos I've done on Peter Thiel, it's kind of related to the weird words that he likes to use, and then the weird way he likes to talk that obfuscates his underlying beliefs. He obviously has arrived at some conclusions based on the way that he lives his life, invests his money, but he always seems to couch everything in a kind of libertarian, centrist, just asking questions sort of way, while occasionally taking very hard stances on, Greta Thunberg, or really any anti-capitalist, any regulations. So, encountered my fair share of bots on threads. Just read a weird bot comment from my thread to Jake this morning. Oh, that's true. You did. Okay. Well, I have to take a quick sip of water, and then maybe we can get into the scripted material. The little introduction that I prepared.
My church had been giving me ass to drink, but now I was freely receiving, the water of life.
Right. That's a very inappropriate and problematic sound drop, but we're free speech absolutists, and we just love pushing the envelope, and we're very brave about the things we say on this channel. By the way, I am very hard up for cash. If any dictators want to pay me to make content for them, any kind of murderous slave-owning government, I would sell out my soul to them. I would also, for $8,000 a month, sell my soul to the Democratic Party. I mean, if you're cool with me just continuing to say the exact same things I would normally say, which is apparently what Chorus and the 1600 group do to Democratic influencers, then I think they should give me money. That's my hot take. And that's accidentally a hot take, Jake, now that I think about it.
This is hot take, Jake.
But, okay, the shit I scripted, the shit I wrote down. For the past 2 years, this is what started my obsession with Peter Thiel, as somebody who talks about an apocalyptic doomsday religion that I grew up in, right? For the past 2 years, Peter Thiel has been giving private lectures, no recordings allowed. Peter Thiel is the CEO of Palantir. So you might think maybe Peter Thiel will be giving lectures about data, AI, Palantir's many government contracts, their expanded role under the Trump administration, which grants them access to all of our private information. But that's not what Peter Thiel gives lectures about. Around the world, Peter Thiel has been gathering with wealthy, influential conservatives to talk about the Antichrist. Notable conservative author and personal friend of J.D. Vance, Rod Dreher, happens to attend the lectures, and he wrote about them on his Substack a couple months ago. In listening to Thiel talk, I guess I don't know if he's British, in listening to Thiel talk and in personal conversations with him, I didn't learn much at all about the nature of his Christian profession, but I came away convinced that however misguided he is from an Orthodox Christian perspective, he is utterly sincere, and he really and truly does believe that we are likely living in the time of the Antichrist, and that we had all better take this seriously, learning to read the signs of the times, and not just brushing it off as a preoccupation of the dispensationalists of pop evangelicalism. Now, if you were surprised to find out that gay weapons manufacturer Peter Thiel was a Christian, so were a lot of stuffed shirts in the Republican Party. Peter Thiel's venture capitalist business partner, Trey Stevens, is a Christian too. And at a birthday party a couple years ago, Thiel spoke about his Christian faith to the magnates and industrialists in attendance at one of these lectures. And at this birthday party. And all of these wealthy Republican people were shocked. The shock, though, the fact that Thiel's faith was a surprise, gave Trey's wife, Michelle Stevens, an idea. Quote, gather influential people, including in Silicon Valley, to talk about Christian belief. Last year, Michelle Stevens started a nonprofit called Acts 17 Collective, the New York Times reported earlier this year in February, which holds events where the bigwigs of the tech and entertainment industries discuss their faith. For those seeking not just spiritually but also professionally, it's a chance to get close to industry demigods. Thiel would go on to be the first featured speaker at the group's first ever shindig last May. In a recent interview with U.S. historian Heather Cox Richardson, tech reporter Gil Duran described the strange marriage of tech CEOs and Christian nationalists in this way. It seems to me, he said, they're trying to develop a kind of tech theocracy, but the idea is very much mapped onto religion. It's the idea that there's this end time coming, that there's going to be this cataclysmic shift, and we have to prepare for the aftertime when we will be in paradise, when we will have our tech utopia. And so we're seeing this adoption of a very familiar religious millenarian narrative, an apocalyptic narrative in many ways. Naomi Klein and Astra Taylor call this tech theocracy end times fascism. So, that is some stuff I was going to get into in a video that, I was probably going to release in April or May or something, but life's been busy. And last night, my wife sends me this article that for some reason just popped up on Apple News, but I totally missed it. It was from Wired. And Wired did this incredible report, and they've been doing incredible reporting in general, into Peter Thiel's Antichrist lectures. And this is the first actual deep dive into what it is he's talking about. So this is linked in the description. It's where the thumbnail is from. This is by Laura Bullard. And it was published on September 30th, so just about a week ago. The real stakes and real story of Peter Thiel's Antichrist obsession. 30 years ago, a peace-loving Austrian theologian spoke to Peter Thiel about the apocalyptic theories of Nazi jurist Carl Schmitt. They've been on a roadmap for the billionaire ever since. They've been a roadmap for the billionaire ever since. This is a long article. It is a long article, but is, I think, worth reading. I wanted to kind of signal boost it. Not that I have the biggest signal in the world or anything, but, it's so apropos to stuff I've been talking about on the channel. I'm sure that it will come up in future projects where I start to talk about more of these oligarchs beyond just Elon Musk. And so this is the article. Peter Thiel's Armageddon speaking tour. Armageddon speaking tour. Apologies. Peter Thiel's Armageddon speaking tour has, like the world, not ended yet. For a full 2 years now, the billionaire has been on the circuit spreading his biblically inflected ideas about doomsday through a set of variably and sometimes visibly perplexed interviewers. He has chatted on stage with the Economist podcaster Tyler Cohen about the catechin. I should have looked this up. I actually meant to look this up because this word comes up a lot in this article. I'm going to call it the catechin, or Kate Chon. Hard to say. But anyway, Peter Thiel has chatted on stage with the Economist podcaster Tyler Cohen about the catechin, the scriptural term for that which withholds the end times. Traded some very awkward on-camera silences with the New York Times columnist Ross Douthat, and is, at this very moment, in the midst of delivering a 4-part, off-the-record lecture series about the Antichrist in San Francisco. Depending on who you are, you may find it hilarious, fascinating, insufferable, or horrifying that one of the world's most powerful men is obsessing over a figure from sermons in horror movies. But the ideas and influences behind these talks are key to understanding how Thiel sees his own massive role in the world, in politics, technology, and the fate of the species. And to really grasp Thiel's catechin and Antichrist shtick, you need to go back to the first major lecture of his Doomsday Roadshow, which took place on an unusually hot day in Paris in 2023. No video cameras recorded the event, and no reporters wrote about it, but I've been able to reconstruct it by talking to people who were there. So I am going to skip forward a little bit because this is a long article. But this reporter, as she says, was able to talk to numerous people who attended these lectures, which thus far have not been recorded. I found a clip on like Threads or something yesterday. Maybe it was Reddit. Let me see if I can find it. And I wonder if it's from this interview. I wonder if we could at least find this interview with this podcast version she's talking about, Tyler Cohen, because that might be interesting and also more visual for a stream. But by Thiel's telling, the modern world is scared, way too scared, of its own technology. Our listless and zombie age, he said, is marked by a growing hostility to innovation, plummeting fertility rates, too much yoga, and a culture mired in the endless Groundhog Day of the World Wide Web. But in its neurotic desperation to avoid technological Armageddon, the real threats of nuclear war, environmental catastrophe, runaway AI, modern civilization has become susceptible to something even more dangerous, the Antichrist. According to some Christian traditions, the Antichrist is a figure that will unify humanity under one rule before delivering us to the apocalypse. For Thiel, its evil is pretty much synonymous with any attempt to unite the world. How might such an Antichrist rise to power? Thiel asked. Wait, how might such an Antichrist rise to power? I need to work on my Peter Thiel, so I'm going to practice. By playing on our fears of technology and seducing us into decadence with the Antichrist slogan, peace and security. In other words, it would yoke together a terrified species by promising to rescue it from the apocalypse. So this is kind of interesting. It made me realize, as a Jehovah's Witness, did we talk about the Antichrist at all? Like, this is obviously a concept in the Bible, and the cry of peace and security is something that's very similar. In fact, I think that any of my ex-Jehovah's Witness viewers who are watching will find some eerie similarities between the theology that Peter Thiel is drawn to and the theology of Charles Taze Russell. And I'm kind of curious to go back and look and see if Gerard, who the writer will go on to explain, and some of these theologians ever overlapped with Charles Taze Russell, because when he was starting, he was a part of this charismatic movement that was happening, this millenarian movement that was happening in the late 1800s. And part of the thing that's really different about Russell than any of the other Watchtower leaders ever since him is that he was very engaged in the public debate at the time. Like, he would debate other theologians. He would go to these conferences where different fringe religious leaders would meet and discuss theology. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses are totally isolated, but I'm kind of curious, just for my own edification, if they ever intersected. But all of this lines up pretty well with what we were seeing in his conversation with Ross Douthat. I found this to be a very useful recap of what he means by stagnation. It's like people are becoming desperate, and the government is too afraid of the dangers of technology to actually combat our existential crisis. You know what? The more I say this out loud, the more I realize it kind of doesn't make any fucking sense, because the Antichrist is a dumb, made-up concept from a fictional book. By way of illustration, Thiel suggested that the Antichrist might appear in the form of someone like the philosopher Nick Bostrom, an AI doomer who wrote a paper in 2019 proposing to erect an emergency system of global surveillance, predictive policing, and restrictions on technology. But it wasn't just Bostrom. Thiel saw potential antichrists in a whole zeitgeist of people and institutions focused single-mindedly on saving us from progress at any cost. I just mostly missed my mouth and spilled twisted tea all over my crotch. Amazing. I was a little cold wake-up call. Didn't believe in the Antichrist. That's true. I mean, that kind of just makes sense. Like, hey, if you're not pro-Christ, you're anti-Christ. It's sort of like if you're not pro-fascist, you're anti-fascist. It's kind of that thing. Who, you know, I'm obligated by YouTube to terms of service to inform you is a very real terror threat to the United States of America. Okay. So I'm interested in the idea. I tried to unpack this in that Peter Thiel video, but I was kind of just bored of editing it. So I didn't include some stuff that I recorded but didn't end up polishing. But one of the things that I find very annoying about him is his conception that you're either pro scientific progress or you're just anti-scientific progress. Like, he laments the fact that science no longer seeks to solve the issues that religion proclaims to solve, like living forever, which, first of all, is just very weird, because science isn't supposed to make promises at all. It's just it is a practice of discovering what is true and what is possible. And it might just be that technologically it is not possible to live forever in the way that Peter Thiel conceives. I believe very strongly in our ability to scientifically and creatively find solutions to the existential problems that face humanity. Like, I do not think we're screwed because of climate change. I really don't like doomers in that regard, because I think it underestimates humans' potential for innovation, kind of like that Thomas Malthus guy who Peter Thiel references, and I just made that little video about, who was so certain that mankind was doomed. And meanwhile, as he's writing all these doom and gloom predictions about food shortages, the agricultural revolution is being developed. And so within his own lifetime, his predictions were just manifestly false. But Peter Thiel would just say that because I'm on the left, that I'm somehow anti-growth, anti-stagnation, where it's just like, you know, nobody's actually just pro or anti-regulation. Good regulations are good and bad regulations are bad. Like, it's not actually that complicated. And it doesn't even make sense, like, saving us from progress at any cost. Nobody is focused on that at all. He just doesn't think that human rights is progress. He doesn't believe in that. Anyhow, so humanity is doubly screwed. It has to avoid both technological calamity and the reign of the Antichrist, but the latter was far more terrifying for the billionaire at the podium. For reasons grounded in Girardian theory, Thiel believed that such a regime could only, after decades of sickly pent-up energy, set off an all-out explosion of vicious civilization-ending violence, and he wasn't sure whether any catechins could hold it off. When Thiel was finished, a moderator kicked off the Q&A session by noting, in so many words, that the speech had been a huge bummer. If the world was hurtling toward an apocalyptic crisis, he asked what might the billionaire suggest we do. Fend off the Antichrist, came the reply. But beyond that, Thiel said that he, like Gerard, wasn't really in the business of offering practical advice. A few moments later, someone in the audience stood and offered a correction. It's not true what you said about Gerard, a man's voice said. Thiel, who often has a tendency to stonewall or steamroll his interlocutors, squinted in the speaker's direction, trying to determine exactly who was pushing back. The voice had the rounded vowels and soft R's of a recognizably Austrian accent and conveyed a quiet, familiar authority. On many occasions, young people... No, sorry. On many occasions, the speaker went on, young people asked Gerard, what should we do? And Gerard told them to go to church. Thiel finally seemed to recognize who was speaking. He leaned in toward the microphone. Wolfgang? The voice belonged to Wolfgang Palaver, a 64-year-old theologian from Innsbruck, Austria, whom Thiel had last seen in 2016, the year they both delivered eulogies at Gerard's funeral. Palaver has a round face, a bookish white mustache, and eyes permanently crinkled at the corners by laugh lines. But that night in Paris, there was no trace of humor in his voice, and he evidently commanded the billionaire's respect. 6 months later, Thiel delivered his Armageddon lecture again, now at the Catholic University of America. According to a recap posted by one attendee, Thiel's argument was pretty much the same, except this time Thiel told his listeners how they might personally navigate the slender path between Armageddon and the Antichrist. Go to church. In an October interview at the Hoover Institution, Thiel echoed the line again. Gerard always said that you just need to go to church, and I try to go to church. This spring, during one of the podcaster Jordan Peterson's many failed attempts to interject, Thiel cut him off. Gerard's answer would still be something like, you should just go to church. By the way, another research video will be coming out soon, before the Elon 2 video is done, and we will be talking about, at least a little bit, something Peter Thiel said in that Jordan Peterson conversation that I've been a little obsessed with. It's not just that line. Although Thiel has never publicly acknowledged Wolfgang Palaver, the Austrian theologian's influence arguably runs through everything Thiel has ever said or written about the Antichrist and the Catechin. And this is why I was like, oh shit, okay, so this is actually important. Because Peter Thiel has ensured that he is one of the most important people in the world. Like, he is, because of his power. Now, make no mistake, if he dies of diarrhea on the toilets tonight, there will be another Peter Thiel in waiting. These guys are like weeds. There's a million imitators and acolytes and jockeyers. We've been talking about jockeys a lot. One of our favorite words on the stream. And there will just be another Peter Thiel. The problem, as I see it, is the fact that somebody this unhinged was able to elevate to this point in life and accumulate this much unilateral power over so much of our lives. Like that is the ultimate problem. Not even Peter Thiel, but the fact that a person like Peter Thiel could possibly attain that level of power. And so this is where I feel like, okay, so I should actually try and understand this guy's theories and so forth. And I do apologize, but I'm going to have to take a quick sip of the water of life.
The water of life.
Which this afternoon is Twisted Tea. How to stop somebody like this? I mean, you know, we all know the answer to these questions, and we all know what we can and can't say. That's one of the fun things about fascism, is you know exactly what you're not allowed to say. So he's never publicly acknowledged this guy, but their lives are intertwined in an interesting way. Back to the piece. In the 1990s, Palaver wrote a series of papers about Carl Schmitt, the German legal theorist tapped by the Nazis to justify Germany's slip from democracy to dictatorship. Now, I know I just started reading a sentence, but let me pull up what I was immediately reminded of, unfortunately, and this is in no small part due to brain rot, that when I heard Carl Schmitt, I immediately thought of a gentleman that we're big fans of on this channel. Fucking what's his name? What is his name? Connor? He mentions Carl Schmitt, doesn't he?
I think that there was a little bit of persecution and
We
stuff
may
like
have
that,
to
which is
rename
bad.
this show
but
because you're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you can say I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
I don't think he said it in that clip, though, did he? But this kid mentions, well, Carl Schmitt mentioned blah, 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 and Mehdi Hassan stops him. He's like, Carl Schmitt, the Nazi theoretician? He's like, I don't care. And that's what prompts the I don't mind being called a Nazi at all discussion from our arguably human interlocutor, Connor. So Carl Schmitt, apparently, is somebody who we have to pay attention to. And that's unfortunate, but this piece does a really good job of contextualizing why Carl Schmitt is important to these folks. Should I do this? Should I go down here? I mean, that makes it slightly more readable, I guess. Let me make the text slightly larger for y'alls. Okay. And thus also the advertisements. And isn't that what it's really about? So there, Mr. Palaver, Wolfgang Palaver. Oh, my allergies, they're starting to kick in. And so there's now some stakes on the screen. You know, can I finish a paragraph without sneezing? So anyway, sorry, back to the piece. Although Thiel has never publicly acknowledged Wolfgang Palaver, the Austrian theologian's influence arguably runs through nearly everything Thiel has ever said or written about the Antichrist and the Catechin. In the 1990s, Palaver wrote a series of papers about Carl Schmitt, the German legal theorist tapped by the Nazis to justify Germany's slip from democracy to dictatorship. Palaver's papers critiqued a lesser-known theological and apocalyptic line of Schmitt's thinking, and they seem to have fascinated Thiel ever since the two men first met in 1996. In his recent Doomsday lectures and interviews, Thiel's language often mirrors Palaver's scholarship directly, sometimes closely paraphrasing it. Thiel did not respond to Wired's request for comment. You know you live in strange times when one of the most influential billionaires in the world, an investor who lit the financial fuses on both Facebook and the AI revolution, who co-founded PayPal and Palantir, and launched the career of an American vice president, starts dedicating his public appearances primarily to a set of ideas about Armageddon borrowed heavily from a Nazi jurist, as in the guy who rapidly published the most prominent defense of Hitler's Night of the Long Knives. So, this is one of Peter Thiel's guys. If he was on WTF with Mark Maron, and he was asked, who are your guys? He would have responded, Carl Schmitt, Nazi theoretician who defended genocide. But the times have been even weirder for Palaver, a lifelong peace activist. He first wrote about Schmitt's apocalyptic theories in hopes of driving a stake through their heart. Yet for years now, Palaver has watched as his own Girardian take on Schmitt seems to have provided a roadmap not only for Thiel's speaking tour, but for his considerable strategic interventions in global politics, from his investments in military tech to his role in shaping the careers of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump to his support of the national conservatism movement. If Thiel takes his own thinking seriously, he seems to regard these moves as interventions in the end of human history. For the past year or so, the two men have been in regular touch, meeting together once at Peter Thiel's home, or Peel, as I call him, just kind of shorten his name, at Peel's home, and debating with each other over text and email. In August, Palaver even hosted Thiel at the University of Innsbruck for a 2-day closed-door dress rehearsal of the billionaire's 4-part San Francisco Antichrist lecture series. I got depressed reading this because it gave me flashbacks of like being a Jehovah's Witness and practicing my talks in my little suit in the mirror or in front of my dad for feedback. And it's like, this is what Peter Thiel, who is a billionaire, is doing, is he's still giving talks on Jesus and like doing a little dress rehearsal. I'm so sorry. I have to blow my nose.
Wow. That was based. Wow. Listen. Says here, forego financial advantages to attend all 3 sessions here.
You know, I do try and be respectful of religious people as long as their beliefs are not harmful And I have to admit that because Peter Thiel's beliefs are harmful, I think I have no problem saying that I think it is profoundly embarrassing to be an adult, a grown-ass man who spends your time writing little dissertations on invisible people and invisible scary demons and their plans to intervene for the other invisible guy who rose from the dead, and we know about it because of a book. Like, it's just, oh, thank you. Christina just brought me some allergy medicine. Bless her heart. Like, this is really pathetic that this is what this guy is doing. I think it's deeply embarrassing to believe in invisible friends as a grown-up. And it is an important reminder that, like, education and status and wealth does not mean that you are sensible or reasonable. You can still have totally silly, childlike beliefs. I think capitalism incentivizes a lot of people to, because we put so much weight on financial success, it tends to trick people into thinking that if somebody who is successful must thereby be intelligent, because only a smart person could get ahead in this system. But it's like, or you could be a shameless psycho with no morals who just wants to dominate other people. You could be that kind of person too. So, these guys have been in regular touch. These guys' relationship gets even more complicated. Palaver has been reluctant to oppose Thiel publicly, and in our conversations, he sometimes downplays his own influence and disagreements with the billionaire. Perhaps that's because, as followers of Girard, both men believe that any two figures who oppose each other strongly enough, as Palaver has opposed Schmidt, as Thiel opposes the Antichrist, are bound to mimic each other and become entangled. As Thiel himself said, perhaps if you talk too much about Armageddon, you are secretly pushing the agenda for the Antichrist. I thought this was really interesting, and it's kind of where I'm at now. Like, I'm an atheist, but I find value in reading this kind of stuff because I do believe that our religious texts are a work of creative fiction, and there's a lot of truth in fiction. And I find this observation that people who strongly oppose each other tend to start mirroring each other. That's been observed in other more secular ways, but I find that to be really useful. And it makes me think of the way that my church started to mirror the church that it originally opposed, the Catholic Church. Like, Russell Rutherford, really up until the 90s, one of the things that made Jehovah's Witnesses brand was their opposition of Catholicism. But really, starting with all of the child sexual abuse scandals coming out, they started backing off. And when you think about Russell, one of the foundations of his movement was that it wasn't a movement, was that he did not want to call it a religion. He said, beware the word organization. He was very dubious of organized religion. It was organized religion that made him start questioning his faith to begin with. Eventually, once you start having regular source of income, you have all these acolytes and people with expectations and taxes to pay, and you need to start dealing with the law. Well, maybe it's a little easier to define it as a religion. And then, well, the bigger you get, the more likely you are to have scandals. But you don't want the people in the group knowing about the scandals, so you got to tell them not to talk to anybody who's left the group. And so, of course, he just ends up mirroring the Catholic Church with its excommunication and sexual abuse scandals and all the corruption, all that stuff. And Peter Thiel, what I find so fascinating about him is, like, I find it difficult to imagine not being self-aware when you have that much power. Like, Peter Thiel is very aware of what his influence is capable of doing because he's seen it. Like, he has seen how he has been able to rise to this level in life. So why wouldn't he believe that he could possibly be the Antichrist? That's why I think, for Peter Thiel's own logic, he's fucking crazy. Like, when I was first making videos about Jehovah's Witnesses, like, that was the logic I tried to use was just by their own logic. What they're saying doesn't make any sense. I think Ross Douthat tried to point that out to him when he was like pointing out, like, hey, don't you think that all this stuff you're involved in would benefit the Antichrist, like all this surveillance stuff and AI and weapons? He was like, well, obviously that's not what I'm trying to do, so it's actually fine. Okay. In some ways, Palaver and Thiel have always been mirror images of each other. Palaver grew up in a small town in the Austrian Alps, less than an hour from the German border. The landscape of his childhood was idyllic, rolling valleys and meadows dotted with small churches and boxed in by towering snow-capped mountain ranges. Their historical context was less so. Palaver was born 13 years after the Allies dropped their last bombs on Austria, and within a month of his 4th birthday, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. From a young age, Palaver was a peace activist, registering as a conscientious objector at 18, and then organizing against nuclear weapons in college. It was in a class about the roots of human violence where he came to study the work of René Girard, whose unusual theories were generating buzz in parts of Europe. Girard's core insight, Palaver would learn, is that all humans are imitators, beginning with their wants. Once their natural needs are satisfied, humans desire intensely, Girard wrote, but they don't know exactly what they desire. So people mimic the aspirations of their most impressive neighbors, quote, thus ensuring for themselves lives of perpetual strife and rivalry with those they simultaneously hate and admire. I actually find that to be, like, slightly insightful. Like, I think that's kind of true. But then again, I think a lot of religion and theologians are really just taking kind of common sense pop wisdom and putting a theological spin on it. Let me take my medicine real quick.
The water of life.
Pardon me. We're just getting a lot of life on this stream. We're getting hydrated. According to Girard, this mimesis, this relentless copying, builds as it ricochets across relationships. In groups, everyone starts to look alike as they converge on a few models, ape the same desires, and furiously compete for the same objects. And the only reason this mimetic rivalry ever fails to break out into omnidirectional warfare is that at some point it tends to get channeled into a war of all against one. Via something Girard called the scapegoat mechanism, everyone aligns against an unfortunate target who is held responsible for the group's ills. This mechanism is so essential to cultural cohesion, Girard wrote, that scapegoat narratives are the founding myths of every archaic culture. Now, is anybody else thinking Severance? Because I'm thinking Severance here. Like, there is a lot of, Second Great Awakening, millenarian religion, in Severance, in the world building of it. Like, I made a video kind of going through some of the visual references to, like, that seem very similar to Bethel in the corporate structure of, like, Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff. Very similar to Scientology, obviously. But if you've seen season 2, like, that goat imagery keeps being important. And, yeah. Wait, is Thiel making himself the scapegoat for humanity? My head hurts. Oh, no. See, he is remarkably not self-aware enough for that, if you can believe it. But the arrival of Christianity, Girard believed, marked a turning point in human consciousness because it revealed once and for all that scapegoats are actually innocent and mobs are depraved. In the crucifixion narrative, Jesus is murdered in a heinous act of collective violence, but unlike nearly every sacrificial myth, this one is told from the perspective of the scapegoat, and the audience cannot help but understand the injustice. With this epiphany, Girard wrote, the old scapegoating rituals instantly started to lose their effectiveness. Having been unmasked and discredited, humanity no longer gets the same relief from collective acts of violence. Communities will scapegoat all the time, but with less and less unifying cohesion to show for it. What awaits us at the end of history, then, is the unchecked, contagious, and ultimately apocalyptic violence of mimetic rivalry. It's like, this does not make sense to me. I understand that this is what this guy believes, but it truly doesn't make sense. So on one hand, mimetic rivalry is less effective than it used to be, but also, no, it's not, and that's what's going to kill us all. But then that won't happen either because of Jesus. Like, what the fuck are you people talking about? I love these deep cuts to edits I've made. Like, there's an emotional sense I'm getting to this, but even this idea that the crucifixion narrative was the first time an audience was able to empathize with the victim of crowd violence, I just think isn't true. Like, the Jesus myth, the Jesus story itself, I'm not a mythicist. I do believe that there was actually somebody named Jesus of Nazareth. I just don't believe that he, for real, walked on water and rose anybody from the dead or came back to life. But anyway, that itself, like, there's so many leaps in logic. It's just like reading JW shit, where you just have to be so in love with the idea of the ransom and of Jesus. You have to be so in love with the idea of Jesus to seek these complicated justifications for it, when it's just on its face. When you look at the story, it's like, hey, do you, as a person living in the year 2025, have any evidence or reason to believe that people can come back from the dead and walk around and then hang out? Like what happened to fucking the guy he resurrected who was his friend, whose name was something. Who was his fucking friend he resurrected? Nobody knows. That's been lost to time. Our Bible didn't have it as Jehovah's Witnesses. They skipped over it because it was too nice. No, that's not true. The upside of the crucifixion narrative, however, is that it offers humanity moral redemption. For Gerard, and Gerard, remember, in this complicated tale, is just the theologian who is very inspirational to Peter Thiel, and also this guy who disagrees with Peter Thiel's interpretation of Gerard, Wolfgang Paulowitz. So for Gerard, the conclusion was clear. No matter the endgame, one must wholly reject scapegoating. Imitation remains inescapable, but we can choose our models. And the sound path forward, as he saw it, is to mimic Jesus, the one model who will never become a fascinating rival in leading lives of Christian nonviolence. Now, I think if a Christian lived like that would be a great way to live. I think that's probably how I thought as a Jehovah's Witness too, because Lazarus, oh my God, like just absolutely unacceptable that I could not remember Lazarus. And I am going to be turning in my streaming card, my religious trauma card. No justification for not remembering Lazarus. I'm like, do I want to read more or do we want to chit chat more? But yeah, like Jehovah's Witnesses, when you talk about leaving, they're like, but where else will you go? Like, there must be one group that is worth being a part of and worth imitating. And if you aren't with the group, you will just end up imitating the world, which includes all religions that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I think it's sort of like, hey, we're all going to be followers. We're all sheep. So you should just choose to follow good examples. And like, I don't even necessarily disagree with that conception of human nature. I just don't think you need to be religious to believe that. Gerard's theory almost immediately became a lodestar for the young Palaver, who recognized it as a bridge between his peace activism and theology. You discover Gerard, Palaver says, and you suddenly have a perfect tool to criticize all the scapegoaters. And the young activist already had certain scapegoaters in his mind. In 1983, the same year as the first class on Gerard, the Bishop of Innsbruck tried to stop Palaver from rallying a group of young Catholics to join the largest ever protest against American missiles in Europe. Dismissing Palaver's views as geopolitical naivete, the bishop told him to read a German essay collection called Illusions of Brotherhood, The Necessity of Having Enemies. The book, Palaver realized, was full of references to an idea, coined by Carl Schmitt, that politics is grounded in distinguishing friends from enemies. Reading the book, Palaver realized he was more or less against every sentence. So as a doctoral candidate, the young Austrian decided to write a Gerardian critique of Schmitt. He would use Gerardian theory against a legal architect of Europe's last great calamity, who is now inspiring the Cold Warriors stoking its next. Quote, focusing upon Carl Schmitt, he explained, meant for me turning against the arch enemy of my pacifist attitude. By the late 1980s, Palaver had become one of a small cadre of Gerardian devotees on faculty at the University of Innsbruck. Girard's ideas were also picking up steam in academic circles elsewhere in Europe, but Girard himself continued to develop his theories in relative obscurity across the Atlantic at Stanford University. Now, it's actually comforting the framework is so esoteric. I know, it's just like... Yeah, I can't live my life anymore not remembering Lazarus. Unacceptable. Yeah, for real. If you do not buy a Watchtower Bible, they will gladly hand you one for free. They might try and get some other things out of you, but they'll definitely give you that. It's good when there's a glossary in the article to explain all the crazy terms all the crazy people use. So, like, there's definitions for the catechin and apocalypse and scapegoat mechanism, mimetic rivalry. I thought about including a glossary like this in the back of Not a Cult, but I don't know. Is that too much, or would that actually be useful? I kind of found this useful when I was reading this last night. But it's not something I really associate with fiction. Does A Clockwork Orange have a glossary? I guess I could actually just look. With this epiphany, Girard wrote, blah, 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 blah. Okay, already did that. My bad. When Thiel arrived at Stanford in the mid-1980s, he was a teen libertarian with a zeal for Reagan-era anti-communism, a hatred for conformity stemming from his time in a draconian South African prep school, and a drive, as he described it, to win one competition after another. I have a competition in me. Like, he's Daniel Plainview. I rewatched There Will Be Blood, and then Oppenheimer as kind of a double feature. Just like thinking about these. Well, I mean, Peter Thiel's much more like a Daniel Plainview than an Oppenheimer, I think, because Daniel Plainview he has a competition in him. He hates almost everyone. He wants only to win and to defeat other people. And beyond that, he doesn't seem to have, he has an insane work ethic and drive. He uses his privilege to maneuver and manipulate. Anyway, that's how I see Peter Thiel. And I don't know, I find it funny that these guys always end up just quoting all the bad guys in fiction. But if you listen to Dune has a glossary. Ooh, okay, that's actually good to know. Here's something about this. First of all, can we just say that any Christian who likes violence is full of shit? Like, I understand that actual Christianity, the history of it, is full of blood and violence, and the Bible is a violent and bloody book. But the New Testament, the actual Christian texts, are all about not doing that. Like, at no point is Jesus violent. At no point are any of the apostles violent. You know, even when it comes to just standing up to mob violence, Jesus turns the other cheek. When Peter draws his sword, slices off the guy's ear, Jesus heals the ear. If you can twist that and turn into, I am going to invest in the most high-tech drone weapons of all time, I just think that you're full of shit. Like, I really don't think you actually care about anything Jesus said. I'm always desperate to hear anybody press any of these people on what they actually like about what Jesus taught. You know, because I'm one of those atheists who think, like, hey, if you actually want to follow Jesus, that's totally cool with me. I kind of fuck with Jesus. I still have a lot of fond memories of all those Jesus stories. You know, they don't mean something to me because they had a lot to do with my growing up and the culture I grew up in. But it is such an expressly anti-violence narrative that in order to be, like, to me, even to be a Christian who loves hunting is fucking bullshit. Like, can you imagine Jesus with a gun? He was a vegetarian. Like, they were eating, like, berries and figs. Christians are full of fucking shit. And so am I, but that's why I don't even bother being a Christian, you see? I'm going to skip forward a little bit. If you don't know, like, Peter Thiel's origins. He was this libertarian, conservative guy forever. That's how he was in high school. If you haven't watched Some More News, his latest video on Stephen Miller, it's worth watching. And it Stephen Miller's thing is more racist, but Peter Thiel is kind of similar in that he's just always been this guy, and there's footage of him like in college talking about how like if you accuse people of being racist, that's actually what's going to cause the racism. Is like he has a little bit of Jordan Peterson in there. That's why that's sneaking in. But it's impossible to do a Peter Thiel impression while talking quickly. Here's my Peter Thiel impression. It's not that it's not going to be sustainable if we don't destroy every single solar source of energy in the next 23 minutes. No, absolutely terrible. Oh, hello. Yes.
I was just going to say, you should watch the last, 5 minutes of This Week with George Stephanopoulos, because he interviews J.D. Vance, and it's really...
Oh, okay. Christina says there's an interview between George Stephanopoulos and J.D. Vance that might be worth watching.
Just maybe the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
This is a bunch of bullshit propaganda that Vance is trying to spew.
Jesus the guy. Jesus is kind of one of my boys. He's one of my guys. No, not really. So Peter Thiel's always kind of been the same guy. He wrote about wokeness and wrote for the conservative newspaper at his school and all this stuff. But at some point, and he started getting into Girardian theology and stuff to be a contrarian by his own nature. He said, by Thiel's own admission, his initial attraction to Girard's mimetic thinking was simply contrarian. It was very much out of temper with the times, Thiel said in a 2009 interview, so it had a sort of natural appeal to a somewhat rebellious undergraduate. Beyond that, Thiel's first impression was that mimetic theory was crazy. But at some point, Thiel came to realize that contrary to contrary to, you know what was happening is every time I try and say her name, it's like a demon's trying to come out of my body. Somebody doesn't want me to talk about Ayn Rand. It's either God or the devil. Contrary to Ayn Rand's fantasy of a few heroic self-determined individualists striding against a backdrop of pale conformists, no one is immune to the imitative desire and its frustrations. After graduating from Stanford Law School, Thiel handed a highly coveted job as a securities lawyer at a prestigious Wall Street firm and almost instantly hated it. From the outside world, it was a place where everybody wanted to get in. Thiel would later say, on the inside, it was a place where everybody wanted to get out. Then, when he applied to clerk under the conservative U.S. Supreme Court Justices Anthony Kennedy and Antonin Scalia, both men turned him down. I did not know that he wanted to clerk for Anthony Kennedy and Scalia. By his own account, Girard's theory of rivalry was gradually hitting home for the hypermimetic Thiel. The hypermimetic Thiel, that's hard to say. As I had this rolling quarter life crisis in my 20s, he said, there was something about this intense competition and desire to win that I came to question. And by the way, no, he did not. Clearly, that competition, desire to win, did not go away at all. Because here he is. I think I'm being prompted for a little break. Sometimes we like to say hello to our guests, our special friends, our many harmless animals who live with us. Hello, Peachy. What's going on, Peachy Poo?
There she is.
There's our baby.
She was sleeping. I just woke her up.
Oh, this is a sleepy baby.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to say? Hello. Hello, do you have anything to say?
I love my fans. I love them all. Oh my gosh, she is so tired.
She is a little rag doll. That's what this little Peachy is. Oh my god. All right. Thanks, Peach. Thank you.
For letting me interrupt.
That was healing. We needed it.
Our spiritual paradise is a place that has many harmless animals.
Now, what do we mean by this?
and modern day rapture. It's true. Darcy, is it Canales, says, I'm actually so glad you're getting into politics. Since we grew up in a high-control Christian religion, it makes it much easier to see the Christian nationalism growing in the U.S. Yeah, thanks. I've thought about making a video about like why I'm talking about politics more now than I used to, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory. Like, it might be something that I could get some views on, but probably not, because every time I think that, I'm wrong. Not Elon too, though. That thing better get views or else I'm going to be sad. Finally, after a brief stint as a derivatives trader at Credit Suisse Group, has Peter Thiel considered that he was just doing depressing, cynical jobs that only help the most privileged people in society? Like, did he ever consider being a public defender? Or maybe trying to be a lawyer who isn't one of the evil kinds? I mean, like, I kind of think that lawyers... Hot take, I don't think all lawyers are evil. Like, I think just because we live under this legal system, we need good lawyers in there, too. I wish more leftists would become lawyers so we could seize the means of legal production. That apparently was not in the cards for Peter Thiel. So he's just like, I question everything because my millionaire fucking job is a little boring for me. And so anyway, he meets the guy. He meets Wolfgang Paulver because he goes to one of his lectures. He was squaring up to present one of the first English-language critiques of Carl Schmitt's theories about the Antichrist and the catechin. It would help set a new course for Thiel's thinking for the next 30 years. I think you kind of get the point, right? Like, Schmitt, in some way, justified to himself that it is really any attempt at world unity and world harmony that is the problem. Peace and security being a thing the Bible says. This is why, from the beginning, Jehovah's Witnesses have had conspiracy theories about the United Nations, first the League of Nations, because to them, the attempt to, I don't know, get along with each other as nations, that's not good, because you got to remember, that's the opposite of what the Bible says is supposed to happen. If people are able to rule themselves without divine intervention, without religion, then that means the Bible's wrong. And Peter Thiel would rather kill all of us and then himself than admit that the Bible might be a load of bullshit. I get a little stumbly when I start talking about the Bible. Bible. It's Bible. I need to get my mid-vision It's Bible drops out there. We're always saying it's Bible in this house. Okay, so as a theorist, Schmitt is best remembered for two things: his incisive Weimar-era critique of liberalism and his decision to join the Nazi Party in the run-up to the Second World War before being cast aside by the Reich in 1936. This is a guy who Peter Thiel thinks is great. And also Connor, that fat loser who has the same shirt as me, but I couldn't find it when I was trying to record. Schmitt's embrace of the Nazis, Paulver told his audience, stemmed from his fear of, quote, the satanic unification of the New World under a global state, which Schmitt treated as synonymous with the reign of the Antichrist. So this is familiar to many of us who grew up in similar groups. Schmitt's greatest failure, Paulver told his audience, had been to think that Hitler was a catechin able to prevent the coming of a destructive state. You know, if you... this is why, if you are anti-socialism, you will veer in this direction where, I'm not saying like you're inevitably going to become like a bloodthirsty fascist, but like if you truly think that there is some danger in the basic concept of people attempting to unify, then you're going to be the kind of person that wants to intentionally drive people apart. And eventually those people become fascists. Yes. I'm going to skip forward because I think it makes sense to us that Schmitt was wrong and why Paulver would have been very disappointed in Schmitt. And so Peter Thiel loved this conference, wanted to talk with Palaver about it, right? Wanted to talk about this thing. And this is where it gets kind of juicy, because this is where it gets to these two, like, thinky guys who are both thinking a lot about the Bible and what it might mean in our day. They have this schism. They have this falling out. This is also critical to the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, where, you know, Nelson Barber and Charles Taze Russell had a falling out. And so I find it very interesting. Let's take... I have to pee so bad. So we're going to take a quick little break.
Have you ever been confronted by a bad report, a false report about Jehovah's people? Angry? Did God really say that? Now that was a lie. Satan here's one.
Had one of those horrible moments where I couldn't find the off switch for Seth Hyatt. Oh yeah, we on Twitch. Get on board. We're going to be gaming. I'm going to be probably the most famous gamer in the world, many people are saying. No, I love the idea of showing and playing some video games. In the summer of 2004, Thiel and his old mentor, Hamilton Kelly, organized a week-long Girardian seminar at Stanford and invited Girard and Palaver to take part. Can you imagine a more boring thing to do? I mean, this is like when JW conventions used to be a week-long, but this is just specifically on one theoretician. Oy. The gathering was a small, closed symposium with only 8 participants and served as Thiel's self-orchestrated debut as a Girardian intellectual. What an esteemed thing to be. Newly wealthy after having sold PayPal in a deal valued at $1.5 billion, he footed the bill for the week and also helped underwrite the publication of a book that would collect all the papers presented at the seminar. At Palaver's suggestion, the theme of the conference was politics and apocalypse. It had been 3 years since 9/11, and mimetic theorists were still processing whether the terror attack augured history's final explosion of, quote, planetary mimetic rivalry. But for Thiel, who sat at the head of the seminar table, the attacks mainly exposed the West's deep and pathetic inability to protect itself. Like, you know, just right here, I'm going to say this guy missed the point of the teachings of Jesus Christ. Humans are weak, we're pathetic, there's nothing going on, it's not like the Jetsons at all. The brute facts, oh we know this is him. The brute facts of September 11th demand a re-examination of the foundations of modern politics, Thiel wrote in the papers he presented that July. Today, mere self-preservation forces all of us at the world to look at the world anew, to think strange new thoughts, and thereby to awaken from that very long and profitable period of intellectual slumber and amnesia that is so misleadingly called the Enlightenment. An anti-Enlightenment guy. Sorry, I was just catching up with chat there for a second. It quickly became apparent that Thiel had spent some time considering the paper Palaver presented the day the two men met in 1996. The, quote, strange new thoughts Thiel wanted his audience to entertain were, it turned out, largely those of Carl Schmitt. Where Palaver had been repulsed, Thiel extolled Schmitt's robust conception of the political, in which humans are forced to choose between friends and enemies, and everything else is delusion. The high point of politics, he quotes Schmitt as saying, are the moments in which the enemy is, in concrete clarity, recognized as the enemy. In Thiel's mind, Osama bin Laden was capable of this kind of politics. The West, with its fetish for individual rights and procedures, was not. Schmitt, Thiel conjectured, would have responded to 9/11 by calling for a holy crusade against Islam, but the West was instead slipping beyond politics altogether, Thiel seemed to fear, toward the creation of a bland, quote, world-embracing economic and technical organization. This was Schmitt's nightmare scenario. In such a world, Thiel said, a representation of reality might appear to replace reality. Instead of violent wars, there could be violent video games. Instead of heroic feats, there could be thrilling amusement park rides. Instead of serious thought, there could be intrigues of all sorts, as in soap opera. But that counterfeit reality, Thiel argued, would be just the brief harmony that prefigures the final catastrophe of the apocalypse, the harmony, in Schmitt's telling, of the Antichrist. Thiel's discussions of Schmitt didn't mention Hitler or the Nazis once. Amazing. So this is where I really started thinking. I started thanking a lot, to quote the Elephant Graveyard. I find this so fucking fascinating because it is so incoherent. Like, you really have to be an intellectually dishonest person to hold all of these ideas in your head at the same time. What I think, and this is me as somebody who's obviously still learning a lot about Peter Thiel, and there seems to be quite a lot to learn. Like, the through line that I see, especially in this very revealing conversation he has with Jordan Peterson, which I have yet to actually watch the whole thing, but I think many people have not because it's fucking insufferable. And you've seen this channel. Something happens to me when I get a little stoned and watch insufferable people. It's my happy place. What I think Peter Thiel likes and misses is the time when science and religion were the same thing. There was no idea that one could do science without God. He likes having the convenient excuse of God. He likes being able, or wants to be able to live in a world where such a thing as a holy war could exist, with him playing a key role. I think he knows that despite America being very, very Christian, it was sincerely founded on secular principles of religious equality, and that religious language is consistently avoided in the Constitution for that exact reason. Peter Thiel has lamented many times, I don't remember if this article gets into it or not, but he is very expressly against democracy, and he is very open about his role as somebody who has a very niche, specific, small set of beliefs that are very minoritarian, and he believes that he should be able to use technology to co-opt and overthrow democratic systems in order to insist upon his will, because when you think about it, of course he would, because he's right. He has the truth, and therefore he should be able to assert his will. Now, and this is where I do think it's complicated in terms of, like, well, how much of this does he really believe? Because it just so happens a lot of really cynical atheist types have done the exact same thing and have found the exact same justifications just without using scripture. I don't know. But he really is wistful for, like, the era of the witch trials, in the era of the Crusades. He likes being able to tie in scientific advancement to theology, and he's resentful of the fact that when he talks about science, everyone laughs at him and that nobody thinks he's serious. I think that's really a lot of what it is. What the tech theocracy video that I've been drafting is about in a lot of ways is the way that a lot of people in high places in politics had this fetishization of royal societies, and who thought that the fundamental issue with the Constitution was in giving up monarchy. That they thought that the outcome of the American Revolution essentially kind of failed because they didn't just go ahead and genocide all the Indians, and they didn't continue to subjugate black people. Like, that's kind of what he thinks. I don't know. Islam is a true religion. Yeah. Well, I mean, and this is the thing. All of these religions end up in the same place, which is, I mean, this is mimetic rivalry. It's just one religion after another. And Peter Thiel is of course, Islamophobic. And he's also, I don't know if there's a word for atheist phobic, but he's very terrified of secularism. Like, I think that's a big reason why Greta Thunberg scares him, is not just because she is a socialist who wants to regulate people like Peter Thiel specifically and hold him accountable for his crimes against the planet and humanity. Also, she's godless. You know, she comes from this godless country, and that is very consciously secular in its social democratic governance. So, like, all that stuff just scares him, and it all comes from a place of extreme fear. That's why I find these guys so silly. They're just these impotent fucking wet noodles. And I mean that because aesthetically, Peter Thiel looks like a wet noodle. He's always wet. Have you seen this guy talk? Where last we checked in, he just gave a talk about how amazing Carl Schmitt's thinking was, and did not mention that he was a Nazi. Then about halfway through his paper, Thiel switched gears completely, as if having second thoughts. See what he does? See how he does to both sides? He ruled out Schmitt's drastic solutions as fraught with far too much violence in an age of nuclear weapons. Then he shifted towards imagining, quote, a way to fortify the modern West that involved working around democratic institutions via misdirection, hidden meanings, and a lack of transparency. An approach he identified with the theorist Leo Strauss. He titled his paper, The Straussian Moment. A direct path forward is prevented by America's constitutional machinery, Thiel said. Still, there are more possibilities for action than first appear. Strangely for someone so suspicious of global unity, Thiel saw one such possibility for action in the creation of a worldwide surveillance network. Instead of the United Nations, filled with interminable and inconclusive parliamentary debates that resemble Shakespearean tales told by idiots, Thiel said, we should consider the secret coordination of the world's intelligence services as the decisive path to a truly global Pax Americana. This surveillance supersystem, Thiel wrote, could act as a political framework that operates outside the checks and balances of representative democracy as described in high school textbooks. No, it's not described in high school textbooks. It is described in the Constitution. That's the political framework that is being described in high school textbooks, just saying what the Constitution says. Yeah, he looks like a melting candle. It is, like, I aspire to be as hated as much as Greta Thunberg is. Which, by the way, I think I said this on the last stream too, but it's so crazy that I really didn't know that much about her. And then the Gaza Flotilla mission happened, and I'm like, I'm such an idiot. She's amazing. Like, she's a hero. I see why all these guys are terrified of her, because she's actually an inspiring and legitimate figure who isn't afraid of them. But I just think, like, I struggle, man. I struggle with, I mean, like, because the question about whatever society we're going to be trying to build after fascism is, like, how do we all live together, you know? I believe in democracy and like multiculturalism, and I also believe that religion is not something that you can like abolish or say no, you're not allowed to do that. Like, I am very opposed to the way in which communist regimes like took over churches and religious leaders and stuff like that, because I am an atheist, so I believe that religion is essentially an act of humans' imagination, and I think any attempt to that is extremely cute. All our pets are like taking a nap in a sunbeam.
I know I'm interrupting.
No, it's okay. I think that any attempt to control religion is really like an attempt to control human imagination. And you get into the problem that all of these regimes always have, which is like, well, then how do you define a religion? How do you separate people exchanging emails about ideas, about a text? And like, at what point does it become a religion? Whatever. Like, I think that we have to get along with religious people. And I do believe in religious people's rights to practice their own religion. Like, I don't view my parents as my enemies. I find Peter Thiel's worldview really disgusting. Like, I don't view religious individuals as my enemies. What I view as my enemy is harmful ideology that treats some people as lesser than others. Supremacist ideologies. It's not an optimistic assumption. It is an optimistic reality. Fascism is a self-defeating ideology. It never lasts. It cannot. It devours itself. Like, it is powerful, but it's like a powerful bacteria that ends up just consuming itself. Like, it's self-destructive. And so this thing will collapse. The way it collapses, how long the fascism reigns for, those things are up to us, not us both, like, doing a January 6th. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's going to take a lot of individuals deciding that they need to take collective action and form community. But there are things that can be done, and there will need to be a society after this. Like, I am doggedly determined to live to see the day where Peter Thiel is behind bars, where he is put on trial, where somebody actually asks him some goddamn questions that he has to answer and can't weasel his way out of. Like, that is the kind of future that I want to build. And I know that we can, because we've done it before. Like, fascism has been defeated before. We have put fascists on trials. The United States was very different. The thing that Trump had the benefit of that no other like authoritarian dictator has is that he didn't go into exile after he was ousted. Like, the fact that he did not get put on trial right away was the sin there. That is the sin that the next whatever, we could call it a president. I don't know if that's quite what it'll be. Whatever the next government looks like, that's not in the hands of MAGA. It will not be able to make the mistakes that our previous leaders have made, where segregationists who were traitors to the Union were pardoned and given fucking jobs in the government. I really think a lot of issues of our modern era stretch back to that. I mean, and then you can stretch back to the original sin of viewing black people as 3/5 of people, as viewing women as less than men. It all stems from a lack of a commitment to humanity. And there's a lot of creepy people opposed to that project. And, as it turns out, they're all in a fucking pedophile gang together. I just sound like a conspiracy theorist, but, I mean, I'm just saying, legitimately, there was a famous pedophile. And as it turns out, if you are a greedy, amoral capitalist who thinks that you deserve to dominate the world, then that includes children. If you don't think anything really matters except for you. And that's what Peter Thiel believes. Like, I needed a little break from reading this because it is frustrating and annoying, this dumb shit that he believes. I wanted I wanted to like do a little rebuttal to this fucking bullshit he said, because it's so stupid. Like, this is how I think what's I find really sad about religious people like Peter Thiel. Like, there are many religious people who are incredibly creative, but oligarchs simply are not. Like, none of these guys are creative. They don't have an artistic bone in their body. They don't have a poetic bone in their body. They're just small-minded because they've just narrowed their aperture to this degree. It's kind of sad. So, like, Peter Thiel says, extolling Schmidt's ability, like, the moment of clarity is when you see the enemy as the enemy. First of all, I would say that probably Jesus wouldn't agree with that. But here's the world that he is afraid of. In such a world, Thiel said, a representation of reality might appear to replace reality. Instead of violent wars, there could be violent video games. Well, what does that mean? Because we have both, and violent video games don't cause violent wars. It just so, like, are we saying that Benjamin Netanyahu is a gamer? Is that what's happening? Like, was Joe Biden a gamer? Was Obama a gamer? Was he like drone striking because he thought he got like a kill streak perk in Call of Duty? I don't even understand what this means. And what he's saying of like, oh no, we have to dream bigger. Like, but his dreaming bigger is like, let's go back to the Middle Ages. Let's just go back to lords and peasants, and I can be a lord. I kind of already am. Instead of heroic feats, there could be thrilling amusement park rides. It's like, okay, so a representation of reality might replace reality. Peter Thiel, the Bible is fiction. It's not reality. None of that shit happens. It's all fucking fake. Okay? They didn't even have camels in that part of the world when Moses was in exile. So just hold your horses. Another thing they probably didn't have. I don't know anything about animals or anything really. But this guy is like lamenting, oh my God, violent video games, it's like they're fiction. Okay, but if you're a stupid weirdo who thinks that like just objects in art have the potential to possess satanic energy and can corrupt your soul, well, if you believe that kind of dumb shit, then I guess you would be afraid of violent video games. Instead of heroic feats, there could be thrilling amusement park rides. It's like, well, half of Peter Thiel's heroes are like Greek gods, theologians who were basically writing fan fiction about fake people who never even existed. This guy's whole life is a fucking amusement park ride. Instead of serious thought, there could be a soap opera. So, like, but in his mind, serious thought is turning over in your mind all the different ways in which Jesus might have supported Carl Schmitt. Like, this is the high-minded, highfalutin bullshit these guys are involved in. They're not geniuses. These are small-minded men who are obsessed with one scholar from the fucking 90s and what he said about a book that was written thousands of years ago. And Peter Thiel extrapolates from this that, oh my God, there's going to be a one world government, and the only thing we can do is to make one that we control instead of the liberals. We have to make a better one world government where we can make sure we keep track of all the, liberals and brown people and women. And just, pretty much anybody who criticizes us. We don't want that. That could cause the whole system to collapse. So you might have picked up that the thrust of this is like this guy who initially inspired Peter Thiel so much, Wolfgang Palaver, is quite disturbed by what Peter Thiel has become. It reminds me of another piece that was written by somebody who used to work with Jordan Peterson and like got him his job at that university, who was then reflecting on like the crazy person that Jordan Peterson became. And the only thing with that is like Peter Thiel is so much worse and so much more dangerous than Jordan Peterson. It's like if Jordan Peterson had weapons contracts with the U.S. government. So I want to just skip ahead a little bit here. Thiel has presented a lecture at all but 2 U.S.-based conferences of national conservatives, where illiberal world leaders meet with their international counterparts and where right-leaning intellectuals across the globe gather to give talks on the failures of liberalism, the necessity of reevaluating the separation of church and state, and the virtues of closed borders and self-interested, soil-deep nationalism. In 2021, Thiel was listed among the conference's biggest donors at $50,000 or more. So this, the entire time liberal governance is doing its thing, half the Supreme Court are involved in shit like this. They're being funded by anti-democracy groups whose entire impetus is to tear down representative democracy. There has been a committed, well-funded effort to do exactly what's happening right now for like 100 years in the U.S. At least 50 years. It's been very strong. Like Roe v. Wade and the civil rights movement was the tipping point for racists, obviously. And ever since the civil rights movement, there's just been more and more funding, more and more courting of any kind of wealthy, prominent person and trying to rope them into this direction. And, like, that is the ingenuity that Peter Thiel's partner's wife saw. Like Peter Thiel's like Palantir partner, his wife, who started that Act 17 collective to try and get tech bros in with Jesus. It is this very capitalistic, how do we make money? How do we gain power? How do we gain power? How do we get more money and power and embed ourselves further and further into the government? What was the left doing this entire time? Not that. They were not doing that. They were definitely criticizing power, but a lot of times people on the left, like, and this spans from people like within the Democratic Party to hardcore like anarchists, we're just like, no, we don't want to do it like that. We don't want to do it like that. And this isn't even accelerationists. I can understand their point. But I don't know. I just don't think anybody was really reconciling with the fact that there needed to be an equally forceful pushback against this. And there just wasn't really any attempt, any broad attempt to smartly and covertly get real progressives into the government and to take power. This has been like a power struggle, and it's been just very, very one-sided since like the 1970s. And so now we're here. Like, the more you read this and the more you see how much money and resources and how many like well-placed people for such a long time have essentially wanted a white ethno-state, even if they wouldn't have put it in those terms, like, it makes sense that we're here. Way more money was going into that cause. Way more power and strategy was being put into the cause of tearing down democracy than there was being put into the cause of bolstering democracy. And it's very frustrating. But I, as somebody who's come into politics a little late in life and trying to play catch up, like I find it useful to do homework and figure out how the hell it is we got here. So Palaver and Peter Thiel continue their correspondence, and Palaver realized that he may have become a major vehicle for his once taboo archenemy's thought, because Peter Thiel is the biggest launderer of Girardian theory. I mean, like, as somebody who's watched a few of his interviews now, like, he mentions the word Girardian constantly. I almost made one of that in addition to Malthusianism. But I always intended to look into who the hell Girard was, because I didn't want to make that same mistake. And then I read this article, and it's like, oh, well, now I see why he says this word all the time. But think if you're one of these Girardian scholars who's like, oh my God, this theologian was basically arguing against the idea of scapegoating people, that Jesus Christ was the ultimate example in why mob violence and demonization doesn't work, and somehow turning that into, no, that is actually good, and we should scapegoat the Jews, or immigrants, trans people, anti-capitalists, the radical left Democrats, all these people on this fucking growing government list. My thing is that type of person shouldn't guide civilization. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think the fact that a person like this was allowed to rise to prominence means that there were many holes in our democracy. Like, my contention is that, again, somebody coming to this a little late, the neoliberal types just allowed this to happen by death of 1,000 paper cuts, by just essentially believing that democracy was this self-reinforcing thing, and by falsely assuming that their colleagues on the other side of the aisle were, on the same level that they were, committed to the Constitution. Like, Democrats believe that Republicans really did believe in the Constitution, and that just isn't true. Like, I need you to understand that. Any Republican who believed in the Constitution no longer identifies as a Republican. They listen to the Bulwark Network. They listen to, like, those raging moderate professor, whatever that fucking guy's name is. Fucking bald sex guy who's constantly talking about his sexcapades. And Kara Swisher, who is also doing that, but has a slightly more hair than Scott Galloway. Just remembered his name. You know, those are Republicans. Those are what conservatives who hate Trump did, is they just became anti-Trump conservatives. Everybody who's voting for Trump now, and ever since he came on the scene in 2015, are people who agree with the idea that there are some races who are worse and deserve to be treated as lesser and should be expelled. I will never accept any reading of Trumpism that rejects the racism of that movement. It is in the DNA and is not fucking hard to understand. If you care about racism, you are disgusted by Donald Trump. This kitchen table issue shit, where you're like, well, but you understand the cost of living. I'm like, listen, man, you could not pay me money to vote for a guy who says that my Hispanic neighbors and friends are rapists and scum of the earth. Like, the way that man talks about black women is absolutely disgusting and horrific. And if you are okay with anybody talking that way about black people, then you're fucking racist. You're okay with it. If you're willing to excuse it, you are not on the same, like, team as me. And the team I'm talking about is not the Democratic Party. It's Team Human. If you are not repulsed by that, then you're racist. I don't know what to tell you. This is a racist movement. And I think what we have is really more of the way that these tech companies have eroded our empathy, I think is massive. We tear down nobody more than our own. I mean, I was just ranting about the left a little bit. That's every leftist's favorite topic, is complaining about the left. And make no mistake, I do it all the time. But anymore, when I see people yelling about ContraPoints or Hassan or whoever the fuck, I'm just like, shut the fuck up, you idiots. What are you fucking doing? Stop it. Like, I'm sorry that the most prominent, famous, well-spoken philosopher of our time, in my opinion, is Natalie Wynn. I just don't even think it's a question. And I thought her statement on Israel-Palestine was disappointing. I mean, I'm glad that she agrees it's a genocide and all that, but I thought she said some things that were kind of annoying in it. But the immediate instinct to say, well, she's not part of this anymore, fuck her, forever, traitor, she's a Zionist who might as well be personally dropping bombs on children, you know, our willingness to reject people. And, like, I had to check myself the other day because I got a little tricked at first about, and I just did a stream about how I like Hassan, like the other week. And I saw that there was a clip that somebody edited to make it look like he shocked his dog with a shock collar. You know, I'll be real with you. As a dog owner and a dog lover, I've always been a little, like, weirded out by how Hassan treats his dog. Everybody who owns a dog has feelings about how other people treat their dogs. It's not like, I've had friends with big dogs You treat the big dogs exactly like Hassan treats his big dog. I don't really love it. I don't like. I know it's stupid. I don't like the way he talks to his dog. I don't like the fact that dog just lays there for hours on end. Like I don't know. But that's just a stupid little thing. It doesn't actually really matter because it's his fucking business. And that shock collar thing was bullshit. But I had to check myself because I almost like posted about it. Maybe I did, but I like deleted it. And I'm trying to get better at not like choosing my targets because I'm opposed to shunning, but I do it. And like everybody on the left, like we do it, man. Like we all do it. And I don't think there's a single a single creator that I watch, from like FD Signifier to ContraPoints to like Lindsay Ellis to Foreign Man of Foreign Land, like Jesse Gender, and like name your leftist creator whose shit you like. Every single one of them has talked about how we have a problem on the online left with dogpiling and purity culture. Everybody says it, and then what do? We all do it. So it's like it's because we actually believe that people should be held to their own standards, like their own morals that they proclaim, and the Republican Project just isn't about that at all. Language is just a trick. It's just a big game you're playing on everybody all the time. There need not be any alignment between the things you say in public and the things that you actually do. How did we get here from reading about Peter Thiel? I don't entirely remember. But this is a channel where I read or watch a little bit, and then I rant a little bit. As far as I understand, that's how live streaming works. And so JD Vance. Vance is a product of Thiel, right? This is one thing I wanted to highlight before I move on, because I know it's a long article. It says, it's no secret that Vance is largely a product of Thiel. The billionaire has helped architect nearly every professional endeavor of Vance's adult life, including his meteoric political rise. After Vance converted to Catholicism in 2019, he published an essay in the Catholic magazine The Lamp, partly attributing his conversion to the influence of two men, Peter Thiel, he was possibly the smartest person I've ever met, and the late René Girard. His theory of mimetic rivalry, that we tend to compete over things that other people want, I need to figure out a JD impression, spoke directly to some of the pressures I experienced at Yale, Vance wrote. But it was his related theory of the scapegoat and what it revealed about Christianity that made me reconsider my faith. As Vance put it, Christ is the scapegoat who reveals our imperfections and forces us to look at our own flaws rather than blame our society's chosen victim. That's my high society voice. In applying this to his own life, Vance focused mainly on his generation's petty online habits in the 2010s. Fucking hell. JD Vance is tweeting now as we're talking. Mired in the swamp of social media, we identified a scapegoat and digitally pounced, he wrote. We were keyboard warriors, unloading on people via Facebook and Twitter, blind to our own problems. Who is we? Who is we here? This is bullshit. This doesn't make any sense. For those of us who are poor, we're perfectly capable of being keyboard warriors and being very aware of our own problems. It's not that hard to post something and then go back to your 10-hour shift, right? But for these people who don't have real problems, they don't have to worry. I think about this a lot. None of these people have to worry about where their next meal comes from. They don't have to worry about making rent. They don't have to worry about paying for their kids' medical appointments or their own. They don't have to worry about going to the dentist and put off dental care for years because of X, Y, or Z problem. What is their only actual problem? Is people telling them that they suck. That's their one problem in life. It's their only problem in life. And anybody who says the opposite is lying. I mean, other than the problems that are common to humans, someone in your life dies or you have a personal tragedy, all of the normal human interaction stuff, yes. But existential problems, they have none of these. And their only window into normies is social media. And what has social media given us the ability to do? Criticize leaders directly or indirectly. It was not the case when George W. Bush was president that he could, well, that's not true. It would be different. Let's go to George H.W. Bush. Could not pull up a website in his computer, search his own name, and see a live look at what everybody is saying about him and how much they hate him, right? That didn't happen. And I think this thing, having all of these wealthy people who live very insular lives, consciously distance themselves from actual poverty and people with actual problems, their only window into it is social media. These people broke their own brains. Like the brain rot and the mind virus stuff, it's all a projection as to what's happened to them. But I just find that interesting. Like, if Peter Thiel is the smartest person you've ever heard talk, I just think I don't think you've heard a lot of smart people talk. I don't think you really have. I think your definition of what's smart is stupid. He knows a lot of big words, but he believes in dumb shit that's made up, like the Bible. So anyway, there's been a big schism between, classical Girardians and Peter Thiel and his acolytes, which is very interesting. But that's kind of the main thrust of what I wanted to read in this article, is all of this weird theological disagreement that's happening in the background. All these rich people, I always wonder what kind of shit they fill their time doing. In addition to sex crimes, Peter Thiel also met with Jeffrey Epstein, of course. But, they're just doing dumb bullshit. They just have way more annoying book clubs that they take way more seriously and cater way nicer. Like, they're doing all the same shit. They're having petty fights with their friends. They're annoyed at things they see on social media. But their impulsive decisions can destroy the planet. He's what stupid people think smart people sound like. And like, when I say stupid, I think I've read this quote before, but I'll definitely use it in an upcoming video. Chris Hedges quoted this legal scholar, or this European political philosopher, on his Substack in this article I read, that basically described stupidity as people detaching from reality. And this theoretician's point of view is that in the end stages of these decadent societies, like what our society is at, dictators and tyrants are not an aberration. They are a manifestation of that society's collective departure from reality. So the fact that anybody could think that Donald Trump would be a good president is kind of a sign that we have an overwhelming amount of people in our society, voters and institutional people, who have departed from our shared reality. Now, many of just like our friends and neighbors, I see them as people who were swindled, who were tricked, who were spackledorfed. But Christina didn't laugh. She said, "Oh Lord," but I think in her heart of hearts, she did like that SpongeBob reference. That's what I choose to believe. And she's getting defensive. Bamboozle, that's the one I couldn't think of. Thank you. Okay, all right. Well, all right. Okay. So, the fact that we have people like Elon Musk just thriving in our society is kind of a proof that there are just overwhelming amounts of people who have departed from our collective world of facts and reasoning, and just being able to look at a claim and say, hey, is that true? To look at a history of a guy and say, this guy basically every single year has said we're a year away from some earth-shattering technological innovation happening that never happens. Like, Elon Musk is a failed prophet, if nothing else. He's made so many fucking predictions that have never come true and will never come true. Like, his entire conception of colonizing Mars itself has been very made fun of. But so many people take him seriously, and so I don't know. That was, I guess, just me explaining why I use the word stupid. Yeah, they're delusional. but it's really weird because I watched a Four Corners Australia segment that came up on my YouTube feed. It's kind of like it sounded like there's 60 Minutes or Frontline almost. It's a really well done piece, but it was on anti-democracy groups in Australia, and these people they're saying the same exact things that MAGA people in the United States are saying, and to me, I just have a hard time understanding the fascist groups in Germany, in the UK, or Australia who are looking at the United States and going, yes, that is what we want here as well. Like, even if you thought you ideologically aligned with that moment, don't you look at this and see like, oh, that's an embarrassing shit show. You know what? I was wrong. We shouldn't do that. I guess not. I don't know. It is astroturfing. And I find it really interesting, the delusions that people commit to themselves in private. Like Peter Thiel seems to be sincere in a lot of these beliefs, but I think of beliefs as excuses to avoid reality. Like that's legitimately what I think it is. And that's not, I don't even know if I think it's a bad thing, because we all have to find a way to live with stuff. Like a lot of people who aren't religious, maybe there is some good like autobiography they read about somebody dealing with grief, and that helps them because they're able to just put it in words that mean something to them. Or there's a novel, or there's a movie, or there's some lyrics to a song, and it manages to articulate that grief in a certain way. You know, is that kind of lying to yourself? I don't know. But to me, it's very, like, religion and faith is what you use when you don't have evidence for something. And so people who define themselves on faith are like, they're consciously avoiding reality. And I do have the part of me who wants to live in a multicultural society where all religions are treated equal is having a little trouble with the reality of all of these religions wanting to be supremacists. Like, I don't think that we should ban religion. I do think that if your religious project is destroying our constitutional democracy that all the other non-religious people have to believe, like that religion, there needs to be something done. But I don't know how you do that, right? Like, how do you bar some, like, should a Scientologist be barred from running for political office? I guess maybe, yeah, I think so, because they think that Scientology needs to take over the fucking world. I think if your belief is that a thing needs to take over the world, like your religious belief, that's a little tough. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? Do people have thoughts on that? Like, and that's the one thing that, to me, maybe capitalism, like, perversely incentivizes grimy religions, but, like, religious persecution and religious violence existed long before capitalism. I do think on some level there is a human tendency, especially with those who are religious, to stop empathizing with those outside of their group. And it's certainly, I'm having trouble empathizing with some religious people. And I really shouldn't even be saying religious, because I don't have that many problems with all that many religions, just the really big, powerful ones who are trying to fuck everything up, the ones who commit human rights abuses. And it seemed to me that, like, when we had a strong conception of separation between church and state, the things worked a little bit better. But I guess then the issue you have, like, Jehovah's Witnesses are a sincere exercise in, no, we don't believe that any human government can be above God's government. And you know what they do? They don't vote. I got to be honest with you. I got a hard time arguing with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of glad they don't vote. But I think that, like, from their conception, that is an honest an intellectually honest thing that they're doing, despite I don't think they have an intellectually honest belief system, if that makes any sense. Unchecked concentration of power. Yeah. Regulated capitalism. Well, we haven't had that in the US for a long time. I know. And I also, like, when we start getting into that, I really don't understand economics, and I have a hard time understanding sometimes the difference between, like, how is it that you regulate against greed and, like, basic things that are common to humans? The thing that Jehovah's Witnesses would always do, in the way I grew up, is like, well, all those traits, like greed and ambition, any desire to be violent, hateful, those will be done away with in paradise. And those things, like, you just won't feel those emotions anymore. God will just abolish those religions, so that, or those emotions, so that society doesn't feel them anymore. And only when we're healed of sin can we thrive as a society. But I don't believe that. I don't think that you can get rid of a world. I don't think you can make a world where there's no prejudice. You can make a world where there's no systemic prejudice, though. There are probably just, like, individual racism or, like, inter-community racism between two marginalized groups who hate each other for some reason, but probably their real enemy is all the white people at the top who are marginalizing them and forcing them in a shitty, underfunded community together. We're getting outside my immediate wheelhouse of knowledge. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I don't know. Did anybody enjoy that? Did we like reading that article and thinking about Peter Thiel? Do we want to watch JD Vance before I go? I'll be real with you. My allergies are kind of bothering me. I don't know if I am going to stream games, but I am going to do it this week. And I think my one thing is I don't have a dual screen setup. I've just got my one screen. And so when I was doing it earlier, there's like input lag, because it's like I'm looking at essentially my own live stream. So it was kind of weird. I was trying to, like, play Tears of the Kingdom. It was kind of fucked up. And, you know, I'm a hardcore gamer. If I'm going to be doing amazing speedruns on Super Mario Galaxy 2, yeah, like artificial scarcity, yeah. I agree. How do people feel about universal basic income as a thing? I think I like the idea of just, like, I don't know. It seems like I just think that people's necessities should be cared for. I don't think that anybody should have to worry about being out on the streets. I don't think that having access to basic food and clean water should be luxuries that are commodified, you have to pay for. But yeah, like UBI, that's what it seems like, is a Band-Aid on that problem. And I'm open to Band-Aids. Sometimes you need a little Band-Aid. It was okay. Stream was okay. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the streams, because I'm obviously just, like, not as tuned in with the JW stuff. I don't really. I want to react to stuff. I need some guidance, because I'm kind of trying to be less online too. So I'm also not consuming as much just cringe clips of stuff as I maybe used to. And I'm trying to not follow the content creator instinct of, like, no, but I have to be tuned into everything all the time so that I can talk about it. I like the idea of being sent stuff to react to, but I don't know. Like, I'm really into working on the scripted videos, and so I've just been reading a lot, and so I like the idea of just kind of, like, I don't know, this is what's on my mind this week, but I want to do more with it. Gaming would be good. And the call-in thing. We need a phone number. That's another thing we're trying to do. I want to do the call-in show again. I think that will be real That'd be real fun, because then you can call in and tell me what's on your mind. We can talk about our religious trauma again. Make all essentials free. Yeah, like, there's no reason for anybody... There's enough space on this earth for everybody to have a place to live. There's enough resources on this earth for everybody to eat. There's enough water on this earth for everybody to be able to drink some water. So, like, there's no reason for anybody to, like, starve to death on the streets. There just isn't any reason other than the shitty choices the people in power have made. Sorry, I genuinely am looking for feedback here. Like, are we chill with a Monday morning article read? Or is this underwhelming and should I do more things? Because I enjoy dicking around. I'll also say I'm like, I wasn't consciously trying to, like, play it up for the cameras like I sometimes do, but I'm more chill mode. Well, good. I hope it was worth it. I'm going to get back to working on my Elon video. Okay, so if you want to, you should join Patreon and or the YouTube thing if you haven't already. And here's why. I am going to do this. I'm going to make a go with this. I've got some book projects that I feel like I might be able to sell and are getting to a place where we're going to pitch them. I've got, like, I'm feeling really good about the main channel content I'm putting out. Like, I'm still learning a lot, but I'm feeling more like, okay, if somebody whose channel I respected watched my channel, I wouldn't be embarrassed. And the one part of my life that I hate is that I don't get to do it full time. Like, doing other stuff is a really big hindrance. Like, my biggest inhibitor to growth is the fact that I genuinely do have a limited amount of time that I'm able to spend doing it, because so much of my time is dedicated to my day job. And so, like, I feel like the only way to actually make any attempt at making a living at it is to go all in so that I have the time to do it. But that's a bit of a risk. In order to do that, I need some kind of guaranteed income. Now, I know there's a lot of people vying for your money and attention and so forth, so I get it. I don't know, man. I watch some streams, and there's some people who are just very good at asking for money in a way that's fun. And I'm watching the whole time. There's fucking super chats, but to me, I'm like, man, me and my audience, we're broke. So we need to find a way to attract some rich benefactors to the channel. I don't know what that is. We're gonna find it. If you know any wealthy benefactors who happen to be mortal enemies of Peter Thiel, what an amazing guest that would be. Send them my way. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm saying anymore. But yeah, I'm going to try and do my gaming stream proper, because I don't want you to think that I'm bad at video games. Now that's my concern, right? It's like, I've never played video games in front of people. They're going to think I suck. What if I do a bad job at Hades 2 and everyone thinks I'm not a real gamer? Who's apologizing for things? The other thing I'm realizing is that, like, everybody's fucking streaming on... Oh, thank you. Thank you. But see, then it feels like I'm begging, and then it feels bad. But also, thank you to Fuck Patriarchy from Peter Thiel, and thank you to Dr. Champ for the super sticker. So wonderful. That's the thing. It's also like, all right, how do we get this to a place where we can just kind of have some fun? There's enough people watching, Play bad, it's fine. All right. Let's see if we can do it. Shit, I think it came unplugged. All right. Subscribe to my Twitch channel. If I can get this thing working correctly, I don't know if you can. This isn't going to show up on camera, but I just looked down and the little dongle just came unplugged from the computer. And I can't blame this one on the cat. He's been chilling in the sun the whole time. So the fact that this thing just fell out of the socket, I don't feel very strong about. All right. Appreciate you guys. Stay tuned for main channel content. If you want to watch a really juicy preview of the next Elon 2, of the next Elon video, you can watch that on Patreon or YouTube membership thingies. And I think I'm probably going to start posting some passages of Not a Cult soon as it nears its more finalized stages and stuff. If you want stuff like that, I'll post things early for my patrons and bonus videos when we can. But my goal is to, in 2026 at some point, start doing this full time. Yeah, that's the other thing is I'm not totally positive that I have it properly set up to simultaneously stream it to YouTube. Not totally positive. I downloaded Streamlabs, and it's pretty easy to use. I don't think I fucked it up. But I just have not messed with it before. I hate technology. I unironically, I'm bad with computers. Everything's computer now. I'm bad at computer. I prefer Bible. I like book. I wish everything was book. I wish everything was paper. And so I'm really bad at technology, and I get a little freaked out at starting new things. I've had my capture card sitting there for 2 months, and I've just been too I get psyched up about setting it up because I know I'll get frustrated. I'll have to watch all these tutorial videos, and I'll do something wrong, and I'll get all mad at myself. Yeah. Thank you to Karen Booth for the super sticker too. But I think what I really want to do is that call-in show. But no, stick around later today. Hopefully we'll do a little gaming stream. I am thinking about right now I mostly stream on Sundays because it's the only day where it makes sense for me to do that for my schedule. But everybody streams on Sundays. I'm seeing Dead Domain is streaming on Sunday. I would rather be watching the Dead Domain stream. I would rather be watching The Line. I wouldn't watch my show in comparison to other creators I like if we're streaming on the same day. I mean, I understand that it's it's competitive out there, but whatever. I'm questioning everything. Not really. The live streams, though. It's crowded. It's crowded out there on the streets. Also, before we go, is For the Streets bad? Sometimes I feel like people are saying it to mean it's good, but I was under the impression that if someone's for the streets, that means they're not for the sheets. And I just want to make sure I'm right about that. Because I'm old, and now I don't know all the words. I hate how much of people's politics is based on them not knowing what words are anymore and being mad about that. It's not either or. It's inflection. Back in my day, it was streets ahead. That's what everyone was saying. That something was streets ahead or your streets behind. It's a yes and. Give it to me in a sentence. I thought it was you are not for my sheets, so you need to hit the streets. Because you're not streets ahead right now. I don't even know this reference. I mean, I'm familiar with the concept of two cakes. Mother Boy from Arrested Development. Explain to me the streets and the sheets. The parable. One of Jesus' famous parables, the streets and the sheets. Verily I say unto thee, he who is for the sheets must also be for the sheets. The streets is where the people are at. I know. That's why I think it's good to be for the streets. I thought it was... I don't know what I thought it was. I don't even know. Nobody knows what it means, but it's provocative. It gets the people going. All right, babes. How do we like that? Babes? I didn't love it. Chums, pals, friends, colleagues, and comrades of all stars and stripes. Let's say goodbye. I think this stream is officially for the streets, and that, in my opinion, means that it was a good stream. And we read an interesting article and talked about interesting things. We learned a little bit. Alt babies. No, I'm going to play video games like everybody in the world who plays video games on Twitch. That's what I'm going to play video games like. I've actually never watched Owen's streams. Listen, I stay away from people who are similar because I'm like, no, I don't want to be... I only want to be like my own channel. So when I start to get the sense that there's like an overlap when they talk about it, I'm like, ugh. Ah, I see. It's good. It's good to be both. Well, what a wonderful message. And to close out, let's say a little prayer with personal slave to Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance.
My friends, instead, my friends, we all know it, and my friend, I love you. Charlie helped me, not because I was a friend, but because I was gay. I'm certain of it. I found myself, I love men. I found myself wishing that I could pick up the phone and talk to God and ask him for his advice and his counsel. But I can't call Jesus Christ, because he was murdered 2,500 years ago. Our Heavenly Father is fake. Get back to work.